Hey, you guys, this is Josh
And Carolyn.
with Homesteading Family, and welcome to this week's episode of the Pantry Chat Food for Thought.
This week, we're talking about the essential animals that we think really make a homestead work well.
Yeah, they're the three animals that really you shouldn't live without, or you want to make your goal to be the hub of a homestead, particularly for a high-producing, resilient homestead.
Okay. It's going to be interesting.
I think so.
Yeah. But first, a little bit of chit chat.
Yeah.
What have you been up to?
We are out in the pasture. Grass is greening up, starting to grow. I'm excited. My goal was to get animals out by May 1st this year. Every year we're extending our season. So we're creeping on the seasons. Last year we got out second week of May. Goal was May 1 this year, but we actually got sheep out. It's April 30th today, and we actually got sheep out 2 weeks ago.
That's
So we don't have the
that a
full
record for
rotation.
us?
That's definitely a record for us.
good.
And we're in good shape. So that is really, really nice, enjoying that. And, besides kind of prepping the gardens, we're really prepping the rotation on our acreage out here and getting our seasonal fences in and water supply and everything set up and ready to go so we can step into rotation in the next week or so.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah.
It's always nice when we get the animals out on grass because it means they're not consuming as much hay.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It reduces the feed bill drastically.
Yep. Yeah, I think the first year we were rotating, we got maybe barely 5 months. The first year we put in this area, we put out, I think, 2 sheep, and it was done in less than 2 months.
It was very dilapidated pasture.
And when we started the rotation, we were getting maybe 5 months with some chickens, a little bit of sheep. That was about it. Now we're going to get a solid 6 months, probably a little longer this year, with at least 1 dairy cow. Last year we were able to run 2. I just don't know that we're going to have 2 in milk this year.
Yeah.
And sheep, pigs, and several hundred chickens. So we're doing good. So seeing a lot of improvement.
Yes.
Through our multi-species rotational grazing system. Yeah.
It's working. And we're seeing the grass come up and reducing the feed bill more and more every year as we're able to get those animals out earlier and leave them out a little bit later. So feeding them less hay. So that's great.
Just like seeing those little lammies out there in the spring hopping
When-
around in the grass.
When the animals go out on pasture, they end up right out in front of the kitchen window. And when you get those little lambs out on the grass, they start running and jumping and oh my gosh, it's so cute. So I just love getting to sit and see them out having fun and enjoying that grass and the wide open. Even the mamas and the ram were out kicking their heels up the other day. It was fun watching them all play and run and have a good time. It's kind of how I feel, I think, in spring on the inside, like, yippee. So it's fun watching them actually enjoy. I should get out there and like do a dance or something, but it's how I feel on the inside. They're just doing a really good job on their 4 balanced legs. Expressing it in physical form. So so I like that.
Well, that's a little piece. Obviously it's spring. There's a lot going on all over the place. What are some things that you're tackling right now?
Lots of plant starts. We have plants everywhere. We've now started hardening off plants. So not only do we have our seed starting shelves completely full, but now you can barely walk down the porch because we have so many seed starting trays of little plants out on the porch hardening off. I like to keep them under the protection of the porch at first so that they can get the air movement and the temperature before I put them out into the full sunlight. So some of them are starting to trickle out into the full sunlight for the final stages of hardening off because they're going in the garden.
I think I got to make sure we get a bunch of these brassicas planted.
We've got broccoli, cauliflower going in this weekend, and onions and leeks. Leeks don't go up to the main crop garden; they go in the cottage garden. But yeah, they're getting ready to go into the grounds. There's a lot happening, and then we're also opening up some new garden beds on the terraces, which is exciting. So the whole front hillside. In front of our house, we terraced 5 years ago.
Something like that, yeah.
And we've been growing in maybe a third of it for the last
slowly
years.
kind of taking
reclaiming it.
Yeah.
And so this year we're trying to go ahead and jump into growing in all the rest of it. I don't know if that's going to happen. We'll see. We're definitely getting another third into production.
The other third that's good work. That's a good, if we accomplish that this year,
Yeah.
that's great.
That's going to be a feel good moment.
It was a good extension without too much of a project.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, we're excited about that. It gives us some new growing space, a little bit of room to expand. These particular terraces just have a wonderful sun aspect. And so they're some of the best for heat gain on the property.
Early in the season, right?
Early in the season, they also really, because they're on that terrace, that the hillside behind the plants, the terrace above it, absorbs a lot of that heat and then radiates off. So it actually creates a really great heat sink for plants even through the summer. So this last year, we saw a lot of really good benefit for growing things out there, having them ripen sooner, larger, pumpkins were larger than they had been, all sorts of pieces like that. So this year we're kind of expanding and we're doing a few more plants down there than we have been.
Yeah.
We're doing some tomatoes down there, see if we can actually get some early ripening tomatoes. We'll see. That's a challenge here in North Idaho. But yeah, so we're doing a lot of those things.
Good stuff.
Yeah, lots of fun. Always fun to get out in the garden in the spring.
Yeah, it is. We're rolling.
We are rolling. Okay, well, we should say thank you to today's sponsor for the Pantry Chat, and that sponsor is Lehman's. We've probably been Lehman's customers for almost 2 decades here. We have loved their stuff, loved everything that they sell. They sell things for gardeners, for homesteaders, for DIYers, for kind of just anybody. And they have a really great line of analog products, which I just love. They are very much focused on the off-grid side of things or the non-electric side of things, although they do have some electric options coming in. But it's really great to see what the simple, old-fashioned tools are and to be able to get your hands on really well-made products that can serve your homestead without all the technology of today. I really like that.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love our modern technology. When you want to homestead in today's day and age, we want that modern technology for a lot of things. But we always want the analog backup. And sometimes the analog backup is better.
It just
but we always want that, off-grid analog, however you want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Tool. Besides just things they have like canning lids and oil for your oil lamps. If you're using those or using those as backup, canning supplies in general, and there's a lot of
things. Things for the kitchen, things for all over the place. The very first thing that I ever bought from Lehman so many years ago was a hanging oil lamp for the little cabin that you had built.
I think I know which one you're talking about.
We still have it. We still use it occasionally. It's great because it hangs and just has a shade that casts light down. And so it's so fun to think back in a time where we actually were using that all the time for light. And that was the first thing I bought from Lehman's, though, many, many years ago.
That was when you were hoping I wouldn't put electric in that cabin.
I was hoping you wouldn't put electric.
That's another story.
Or a bathroom, but I got both. Thanks for watching out for me.
I think you were
keeping me safe from myself. Okay, well, yeah, we'll share that story another day. But let's jump into, I should say, make sure that you keep an eye on our email list for any specials that Lehman's puts out, because sometimes they do really special sales, and we definitely let everybody know about it. And go check them out, lehmans.com, and LEHMANS, Lehman's.
Thank you, Lehman's, for making this episode possible today.
All right.
Question of the day. I'll just field this one towards you. I know we'll probably both answer it, but this is on a post or video, avoiding garden overwhelm. And Leslie is asking, how is your family's year of rest going?
Oh, that.
Forgot about that, didn't you?
So for those of you guys who aren't in the loop, this year, Josh, is our 7th year on this property.
Mm-hmm.
And Josh and I have been planning since we moved on the property to take this year as a slow down kind of rest year, which doesn't mean we're not doing the regular homesteading things. It just means we're not doing as many infrastructure projects or major rehabs or anything like that, except when things fall apart or break, which of course.
Which they started doing a lot this winter, about after
Which-
January 1st when this all kicked in. It's like a vehicle that needs to break and
Yeah,
break,
pretty
the
much.
dishwasher.
It might have been
oven.
predictable. Yeah. That it was all going to kind of fall apart the year that we're like, hey, we're not doing anything. Definitely when we moved onto the property, it had a lot of deferred maintenance. And while we've been getting it up to speed, there are places that we haven't gotten to yet. And they're yelling at us right now and saying, you need to pay attention. So anyways, we'll see where we get to with that. We definitely do have a slowed down calendar.
I know for me, I don't know how it's for you, but we've done every year major projects on the property to move the property along. So a lot of extra work ourselves, big projects, contractors, we've done a lot. And so for me, it is, even though we've still have a full homestead load, it is way geared down.
Yeah.
And it is very nice. I wouldn't say it's slow, but it's not at that pace. And I'm not having to problem solve and keep all these things going on that level. And I think that I'm feeling that. I think we're feeling a little bit over as a household, and overall, it's going to allow us to take more breaks in more spots.
Yeah. Take a little rest.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so a question for you. This one came in email from Kim. After we move into our new homestead, what makes the most sense to start first? Gardens, chickens for eggs and meat, or bees? Hard for me to get a plan together when I'm not sure what to start with.
That is a great question. Those are all great options. And I don't think there's just a one right answer. I can give you a couple tips to think through for yourself. I would say that bees would probably be the bottom of the list just from a productivity standpoint. Bees are amazing, but for, the work, especially learning something new, getting into them first year, you're going to put a lot into them. Once you get them going, they're less work, but there's a lot up front and you're not going to get a huge return for your efforts. So I want to see you do something that's, you're going to really feel the effort, right? You're going to see the effort. You're going to enjoy it in your kitchen. And so, garden is great. Gardens are great. That's a great way. Garden is one of your most productive dollar for dollar inputs, labor on the homestead. That and a dairy cow, honestly, like value wise, those are your two big producers. So a garden is great if you've got the space, if you feel good about it. Chickens for meat is also quick and very, very valuable, right? They're not hard if you've got the space. Within 2 months, you could literally put, depending on how much space you have, at least say 75 chickens in one chicken tractor. Doing the math, even 5 pounds each. What is that? That's 450 pounds, 425 pounds, somewhere up there of meat in 2 months, right? And it's not really hard. So, that's where I'd weigh out garden versus chickens. What's your budget? How does your family eat? What size property do you have? There's a few things like that. And look at, what's going to be the most return for your effort in this first year, because I want to see you get a good win, And of course, the chickens can also lay down fertilizer in an area that you might use for a garden later. That would be one strategy to boost that garden productivity ahead the following year. So take a few of those things and kind of find out what you're inclined to, what your land is inclined to. Chickens are also a shorter commitment time of year. So if like you're new to all this and you're working to incorporate everything in to your lifestyle, now the hard thing about chickens right now is you might have a hard time getting them this time of year for meat chickens. But I would look at the meat chickens or the garden. That's where I would be going towards for some high productivity, good wins. Chickens, you're going to get the quicker win, and maybe add some pre-prep and fertilizer to a future garden spot.
I would add that if you're brand new to homesteading, I don't know that I would go with the meat chickens. There's a lot of skills wrapped up in being able to butcher them,
Sure.
and all of the different
Mhm.
pieces. And if that's something that's new to your family, that this might not be the moment, especially if you're still like actively unpacking boxes and trying to move in and life is already a little hectic in a place. Um, so, keep that in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where it's like there's not a perfect answer.
Mm.
Take these things and apply it to your situation. But make your effort count, right? You want the fruits of your labor. So put those pieces together.
Mhm.
And if you focus on a garden, maybe don't go too big and wide. Focus on a few core crops that will do well in your area, that your family will enjoy. You'll be excited to harvest, and it gives you some good provision.
All right, so moving on to the
Yep.
main topic of today, we're talking about the essential animals on the homestead. And there are some really special things that can happen on your homestead when you start integrating systems that work together
Mhm.
with each other. And what we're talking about today is kind of the ultimate in homestead systems working together and supporting each other
Yeah.
in a way that actually can support you. And there's 3 animals that play into that.
So I'd say these are the must-haves. There's lots of other animals that are good, that might be better for your situation, but if you want like a homestead that's really dialed in to providing for you, building fertility, stacking functions is what we call it in permaculture, which is what Carolyn is talking about, animals working together. There's 3 that just work together really, really well. That is the chicken, the pig, and the dairy cow.
Ooh.
Which one you want to tackle first?
Let's go with the chicken. Most
Yeah.
people are pretty comfortable with that idea, the chicken.
Sure. Well, and the chicken, right, is kind of the gateway to keeping animals. They're small.
The gateway drug, right?
Gateway drug.
For those
right?
of you guys who were
Yeah.
raised in the same era.
Many stories about that husband when his wife first came to him and said, "Hey, I want a
I
chicken."
want a chicken.
That was the beginning of a waterfall.
Just a couple of chickens.
A good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. We won't talk about guineas. That's another story. Don't get 30 the first time. Just saying. Anyways, guineas are cool, but they're not part of the essential 3.
Getting guineas too early on, especially if your husband isn't sold first, might decrease your bargaining power later. Just saying.
Anyways,
Okay,
the chicken is obviously easy to keep. It's not scary for people. It can provide you with eggs, which is a wonderful food source. Chickens also can do garden prep for you. They can give you fertilizer. So you always want to be thinking, what is this animal going to do for you? So they're a great, great way to go. They're also omnivores. So they can eat just about anything. So, on a homestead, we talk about frugality. We talk about, zero waste or low waste. Well, there's no organic matter that should come out of your kitchen and ever go to the trash.
Yes.
And so you can feed your chickens with all the organic waste coming out of your kitchen. Don't get hung up on the don't feed them this, don't feed them that. It's another discussion, but don't get hung up on that. It's a distraction.
Chickens can eat almost everything.
Yeah. And they know what not to eat when you're feeding them almost everything.
Enough. Yeah.
Right. Now, if you're feeding them all orange peels, you're going to have a problem, but I don't think you're probably eating all orange peels. So it's just funny what people get hung up on. Anyways, but the chicken's an omnivore, so it can handle everything out of your kitchen. What it won't eat, it will help you compost and build fertility. So very, very powerful. We'll come back around to the chicken in a minute and how it fits into.
Well, I do want to bring out this aspect, though, that you're talking about that I think we often don't think about when we're getting into livestock. And that is that, yes, the chicken is going to give you a product. It's going to give you an egg or meat, right? But during the lifespan of the chicken, you can use that chicken to actually accomplish other things for you on the homestead. And this is a moment where you can have the animals working for you, which is 100% in their nature and makes them very happy and makes them happy, healthy animals. But you can use it to your benefit. And if you're not aware of it, you can actually use it to your detriment. If you've ever seen a chicken yard that's a disaster and has holes all over it and, scratched up.
Piled up poop to where it's gotten thick and nasty or
That's
rock hard.
just not using the chicken the way it should be used. So it's kind of getting a detriment out of it instead of the positive benefit out of it. And this is true of all the different animals. The manure, what is the Chinese proverb that the manure is the first product of any animal, the first harvest from any animal. And, that is so important to be putting that back into our gardens, into our growing spaces to increase the fertility of the land. So I just want to encourage everybody to think about not only what the product is that you're going to get from the animal, but also what the animal can do during its lifespan to help you reduce your workload or other inputs that you have to bring in.
Sure. And an example here, and we can even kind of tie off of Kim, who was asking about what to do first. Well, say you get egg-laying chickens and you have a spot that you want in a garden, but it's complete sod or it's completely overgrown. Well, you can get the egg-laying chickens, and for a season, you wouldn't do this forever, but for a season, you can put them in that area with some temporary netting, and you can use them to destroy the sod, destroy the vegetation, add nitrogen-rich fertilizer, and get that prepped for a garden space while feeding you. That's obviously you're going to move them on somewhere, but that's just one strategy of what Carolyn's talking about that fits, might fit Kim's situation here.
Right.
That chicken can be a great place, and then it's going to find its permanent place within the homestead.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely. Another way that we use them is laying down that fertilizer in the pasture by rotating them more quickly so they're not ruining the grass, but they are getting fresh bedding every day because they're moving onto fresh grass, but they are laying down their manure and fertilizing it and helping that grass to grow even better for feeding other animals in the future.
And they're also doing parasite control or fly control. Last year, we left the chickens, all of them up stationed out of the barn. They were free ranging, but they weren't in the pasture rotation, the egg layers. We had all the meat chickens out, but they didn't follow behind our sheep and cows in the same way. And we noticed a huge fly difference out in the pasture area and around the house from not having those chickens out there. So
meaning
that's another job.
Had more flies.
We had more flies
because they weren't going through and making sure they were reducing the fly level.
Right. So we look at them at small and think about eggs, but they are a very, very essential component on the homestead that does a lot of work for you in different ways depending on your needs. And so they're number one, absolutely essential, and of course the easy starting place. So there's really not a homestead, unless you're just not doing animals, that should be without a chicken.
Do you know how much more expensive our eggs have gotten over this last season coming out of the barn?
Zero.
Yeah, not anymore.
They're actually getting cheaper right now because the spring is coming and there's more bugs to eat, and they're going to be less dependent on our winter feed ration.
So this is one of the things to always be thinking about is, what you're doing on your homestead is actually helping to secure your food supply and keep your prices stable, because when you're doing it yourself on your homestead, you don't have the price fluctuations in the same way. So I just want to pull that out while we're thinking about this. But.
Absolutely.
Okay. So
we got two more. Number two. So chicken is, we'll call it your foundation. Stepping up is going to be the pig.
Ooh, the pig.
And there's several great things about a pig. One is they're not as big as a cow. So if you're looking to move up and work with the animals, they're a little more approachable. They don't take as much space. You don't have to have a lot of pasture. And pigs are also very useful and very, very productive, besides a great resource, not just in meat, but in fat as well. And they're omnivores. So again, pigs can eat your waste, all of your waste. And most of
your kitchen waste.
Yeah, your kitchen waste, right? Everything coming out of the house.
Or garden waste. Just wanted to make sure.
Garden waste, kitchen waste, most of your organic waste. And so they can help you recycle. They can put flesh and fat on from your kitchen and garden waste while also giving you fertilizer. And they're not too big. So they're kind of the next step if you're looking to step up. Absolutely essential to have.
Pigs, There are two different types of pigs. I'm sure you can classify pigs all different ways, but for this conversation, there's two different types of pigs. You have rooting pigs and you have non-rooting pigs. And when it comes to thinking about the work that they can provide on your homestead, you really need to consider this.
Mm-hmm.
If you have pigs that you have out on your pasture, you don't want them rooting and tearing up your pasture.
Right.
If you have, maybe pigs that you're going to put in the barn to follow your cows to turn up the bedding and create compost, we talk about that in some other pantry chats, how to handle all of the barn waste. Rooting pigs are an amazing benefit. They really help make compost right in place in that situation.
And prep land. I mean, they can do some serious land rehabilitation.
Yeah.
So I think I want to clarify, because you're very right. We've been very focused on non-rooting pigs. Most of the world is focused on rooting pigs, and the vast majority of pigs out there are rooting pigs. So what I'm talking about here for the small homestead is generally the rooting pig.
The rooting kind.
Yeah. The grass-fed is kind of a niche, and it's a cool niche, and it's kind of another discussion, and maybe we should talk about that at some time. That might be another a good one to talk that out, since we've been doing both for a lot of years now. But generally, a rooting pig, an average pig that you're going to get, you can use that pig like the chicken. You can use it to shape up some land. You want to turn some sod. You want to turn some run-over ground into a garden. I mean, honestly, even rough ground that might eventually be pasture, you can use the pig. You're going to have to go out and use some equipment to smooth it, but they can go and loosen the soil, turn it over, eat the grubs, do a whole lot of work for you. And they're very, very efficient at converting feed into meat and fat.
Fat is one of those things that can actually be really hard to produce on the homestead, but it's one of the things that I feel like is super important to do, because where are toxins stored? Toxins are stored in fat. So when you're buying in fat from the store, whether that's butter or you're buying an oil of some sort, maybe you're buying, maybe you have a good source for lard or tallow. Hopefully you're not buying the store-bought lard. That stuff shouldn't be classified as food, in my opinion. But those things definitely have a potential to hold on to a lot of toxins.
Right.
And so it's really important in your diet for your health to make sure you're eating really clean fat sources. So raising them yourself is great. The problem with buying them, even the clean ones, is when you get them clean, they're expensive.
Yeah.
And so pigs are an amazing way to go ahead and make that leap to growing your own, but doing it in a really efficient way that doesn't end up taking a ton of time.
Yeah. Here's another cool thing about both the pig and the chicken. So start to just combine these two. You see all the different work, all the different things they can do for you, they can provide for you. You can also, besides feeding them, all of your household food waste, all of your garden waste, even some of your tree trimmings, different things, you can, and I lost my thought here for just a second, what I was going to say.
Pigs and chickens, how they work together?
Yeah, the pigs and chickens and how they work together. You can grow a lot of their food very easily as well. You don't need pasture. You don't need large tracts of land. You can grow root crops. You can grow all kinds of squashes. You can grow sunflowers and different seeding things. There's all kinds of stuff you can grow to supplement or even get good enough. We're not there yet, but to completely feed those animals. And honestly, that's how the homesteads of old did it. They didn't have commercial granaries and all this formulated food. They might have been able to get an access to a little bit of scratch and cracked grain here and there, but it was too valuable and we didn't have the distribution system. So people had to feed the animals this way. That's why they're kind of ubiquitous in the homestead. And so know that you can grow a lot for these two. You don't have to have an acre, 2 or 3 of pasture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's important too. Think
No, it
about
is.
the sustainability of your own animals, because if you're just shifting from buying all your meat from the grocery store to now you are totally dependent on the feed store instead, you're still just as dependent, honestly. You may be bulking up a little bit, maybe doing things a little bit differently, but in the end, you can't grow those animals unless you have access to that
not extended
in that model. And so starting to look at ways you can start bringing them in, and some animals are just so much easier to feed than others. And the chickens and pigs are two of the top.
Yep. Okay. Last one. This is the one that some people love and some people go, I don't want anything to do with it. That is the dairy cow.
There you
The
go.
dairy cow is very, very powerful, and on a functioning, self-sustaining homestead that really is working to provide as much nutrient-dense food for the family as possible, the dairy cow is an essential. And dollar for dollar, you know, I've never, it's been a while since I've done the math, but I've actually compared the garden and the dairy cow at times. And you know, it kind of depends on what your resources are for a dairy cow, but their return on investment, they're both huge. And the dairy cow is huge if you will utilize her and take her milk and make butter and make cheese and sour cream or whatever dairy products you might consume. Besides enjoying that milk. It's very, very powerful.
Well, it's amazing. You take an animal that consumes mostly grass and turns it into, you know, on average, probably 4 to 6 gallons of milk a day that you can turn into other dairy products.
Yep.
That's huge. And if you're going out of your way to buy raw milk right now, you know, in some areas of the country, we're talking $16 to $20 a gallon for raw milk.
Yeah.
Luckily, it's a little cheaper here, but not by a whole lot. That's a lot of money every single day from something that's eating grass.
Yep.
And that's a huge cost savings. But the really cool thing about the dairy cow is not only does it bring you milk and cheese and butter and sour cream and all the goodies that you might think of, kefir, all the different yogurt, it can also help to feed your other animals.
Well, exactly, right? Those pigs and those chickens are omnivores, and most families aren't going to be able to utilize all of the milk or all of the milk products from the dairy cow. And so you can put, particularly the pigs, they'll consume all of it, no problem. And you're then putting fat on the pig with that leftover that you have. Now, the chickens love the dairy as well. And when we put down milk or clabbered milk or any kind of product along a good ration or whatever else we have for the chickens, chickens always go to the dairy first. So that cow, you start to build a loop. That cow now helps supplement the food because your kitchen probably isn't providing enough for the pigs and the chickens, but now the dairy cow can start to do that. Okay. So that's one kicker. Here's the other one that a lot of people don't know. A cow puts out roughly 50 pounds of fertilizer a day. Okay. That's 50 pounds of fertilizer a day from grass that was grown by the sun. Managed well, that is powerful. That is a very, very valuable resource that can go back into your garden or back out into the pasture, or for your trees, it can go anywhere. But that's 50 pounds every single day.
So I think it's so fascinating, and I love the way they work together because
while you're talking.
Because if you think about it, if you have just a little bit of acreage that you can grow grass on, you have that dairy cow and she's consuming that grass and she's giving you fertilizer, both for the pasture that she's eating off of and for your garden. She's giving you milk. She's giving you all these different products. But then you can use that extra from her to then feed the chickens and the pigs. And so from that, like, you're turning grass in that situation into fertilizer, into milk and all sorts of dairy products, into meat, into the fat you need to eat, like, lard in this case, and into eggs.
Yeah.
All converting the grass that the sun is growing on your homestead into all of those different products in a super sustainable way.
Yep. That's 18,000 pounds, roughly 9 tons of fertilizer a year from the dairy cow. That, I mean, you want to talk about a fertility booster. Now, that can be a serious problem if you don't manage it right, but it's not complicated to manage it well and get that.
Here's what's really cool is the pigs and the chickens help you manage it well.
Right. And you can, there's lots of different systems. I mean, we talk about rotational grazing and we can link in some other videos here. There's lots of different systems, but that's the point, is how valuable that dairy cow is and how the three work together, and the chickens help keep the parasites down, and they can help take your manure pile if you've got to pile it up with some carbon and turn it for you and make compost out of it. It's a wonderful, wonderful system. So these are three animals that really every homestead should have. that you should not do without. If you're looking to build a homestead and you really want to maximize your efforts and the inputs of time and money that you've got to put in to get this going, these three together, working towards them, not that you got to start with all three at the same time, these three together are going to be the most powerful. And that's where I would head always. Then if you want to add some sheep or some goats or something, go for it. And I want to add one more thing, because, you know, one of the things that scares people from the dairy cows, well, I need a ton of land. This could be a whole nother discussion, but I've been reading a book this winter given to me by my friends Sean and Beth Doherty called Keeping One Cow. It's a historical account from forgotten books. So Keeping One Cow, Forgotten Books.
By an unknown author.
Well, it's an unknown author because it's a compilation from different regions and different time periods, pre-industrialization, of how people kept a dairy cow. Almost everybody in here kept a dairy cow on from 1 to 3 acres. 3 acres is the most that any of these people kept a dairy cow on, and totally sustained her. And a lot, 2 and 1 acres.
Yeah.
And actually, if you do the math in grass growing country, 1 acre of grass, even in our country here, which is not extremely wet and not high yielding, produces just the right amount of grass in a year that a dairy cow needs. 30 pounds a day times 365. I won't do the math in my head, but it's very, very doable. And so I'm kind of on a mission to help people see how actually doable the dairy cow is.
Yeah.
And in fact, Sean Dowder and I talk about this regularly, and they talk about it a lot. Like, they would keep a dairy cow in the garage just about because it's so valuable. And, you know, that's a little bit of a
stretch. Yeah.
A stretch, of course, to make a point, but, you know, kept well and maintained well, she's that productive for you. And we didn't even talk about the calf that you're going to get yearly, that maybe you don't have room for the calf. You can either raise it up for beef for yourself, but if you don't have room, you raise that calf up, you sell it at a few months old, and you've got several $100s to then put back into feeding the cow or somewhere into your system. So very, very powerful, these three animals together.
It becomes really neat to see how that circle really can close on your homestead, and you can start creating not just the food that you need for your kitchen, but the food that you need for your animals and all the resources you need right there on your own land.
Yep.
All right.
Very, very cool. Hope you guys have enjoyed. Drop us your questions or thoughts, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Goodbye.
Bye.